let's talk about projections, what they are, what it means to own them, and why you definitely should. But first, your daily dose of Daisy. She's learned by now, when I'm making a TikTok, I'm not petting her, so she doesn't sit with me anymore when I make videos. Okay, so we've already talked about projections a fair amount when we're talking about the orange man, because he does this all day, every day. And in that context, a projection is accusing somebody else of being the thing that you actually are. And that's like the most blatant, the most obvious one. But we're all projecting onto other people, again, all day, every day. This is something we psychologically do when we are unconsciously in process of trying to work through our emotions or our self-identity or our position in the world. It's a very normal, natural psychological process where we take the things that are uncomfortable, unconscious, and we project them onto other people. And we do this because this allows us to make the invisible visible. The as above, so below. We take what is unconscious and project it out on someone else so we can act it out and say, oh, you're that thing and I hate that thing and that's bad. So there are some benefits to realizing that we project all the time. When you are aware of it and when you are using it consciously, then projection actually becomes a tool to say, ooh, wow, wait a minute, I was projecting onto that person. That's not maybe really who they are and what they're doing. This is actually an attempt of myself to figure out why the hell I'm so upset. And this is one way that my shadow work process is really helpful because it takes you through all the steps of getting into those really sticky, uncomfortable emotions and walking through them to parse them out. What is this really about? What does this really mean? Because if we can do that, then not only will we stop unconsciously projecting onto other people, creating conflict, creating drama, we'll just be able to get into the emotion from in the first place and be able to unpack what it means. Because when projections run amok, we're basically accusing people of things that are not true and then punishing them for being something that they're not. And one of the ways this becomes really problematic is when you project onto other people, you are making them responsible for your feelings and for your safety and your success. You're blaming everyone else around you when really the trigger was yours. It exists within you. You are the origin of it. You are the cause of it. And you are the key to healing it and clearing it and working out whatever it is that's coming up through this triggering, through this projection. But if you constantly project it onto other people, you are giving your power to other people. They are the reason that I am unhappy. I will never be okay until they change. And that's a losing battle because they're not actually that. You're assigning that to them. You're making them responsible for how you feel. And you can never change when you've made someone else responsible for something that was never theirs to begin with. It was yours. So this is especially important in our interpersonal relationships and our inner circle, to own our projections, to recognize where we are throwing something at someone that doesn't actually belong to them. It's actually ours. So when you own the fact that, oh shit, I'm projecting onto you, maybe they didn't really mean that thing. Maybe that really wasn't their intention. Maybe this is me trying to work something out through them. And then you can take control of that process and work it through and come to conclusion on it. Now, surprise, we have actually, in the 4am Club, we've been doing a whole lot of projecting. We've been doing it this whole time, but we've been doing it in a way that is actually healthy. And let me unpack that. I have been saying all along that this time period right now is especially helpful in working through our deep traumas, our unresolved issues with bullies, aggressors, with people who have been violent, with people who have hurt us and abused us. We have been working that out through the public figures in our country right now. We have been doing our projection onto them. We have been allowing them to be the very personal villains in our lives for the purpose of working through our shadows, which is why I've been talking about shadow work all along, which is why I've been leading us all deeper into our healing ever since the beginning of this. Because as people out in the public sphere trigger us, we can then use that triggering process, that projection process to say, oh shit, like I am feeling a lot of things about that person. I wonder what that means about what's inside of me. And when I deal with what's inside of me, I become more empowered. I am able to heal these deep things, these deep-seated things. You know, I hear so many people in my comments say, he is so much like my father, my ex, this narcissistic person in my life, and I was never able to work it through with them. Maybe they've passed on. Maybe they're no longer in our lives. Maybe they're not in a position where we can have a healthy dialogue. But by working it out through that public figure, I can now come to my healing, my release, my peace. And it is from that position that we are then empowered to not only make it through this time of whatever they're throwing at us, we're no longer so triggered by the inner stuff that we can deal with what's presented. We can deal with what he's actually doing. Because that's an important caveat when we're talking about projections. We're not talking about things they're actually doing. Projections are internal narratives about someone's intention, about what they meant to do, about who they are, and what they're going to do next. These are all the narratives, the stories we tell ourselves about what's going on that aren't actually based in reality. They're based in our wounding, our values, our beliefs. So we can see how projection comes from a fantasy. But when we are looking at that orange man, there are facts to back up how we feel about him. There is a track record of things he is actually doing to be worthy of the names we call him. He is actually a PDF file. He is actually a cheater who fails at business so he can cheat people out of their money. The list goes on. So I call that out to help us understand the nuance involved. When we're using public figures to go deeper into our own healing, we're not excusing the bad behavior they actually have by saying, oh, he reminds me of my dad. I worked it out with my dad. We're not going so far as to say, and therefore Trump is now a good guy. No, people can still be held accountable for their actual actions. And that's what we're doing here. If you are locked into an unconscious battle where you are projecting old wounds onto somebody, you can't actually get to the matter at hand. We can't deal with Trump for who he actually is if we're all just stuck in childhood wounding of narcissistic abuse. Okay, so if you've made it this far in this video, you might have guessed why I did this video today. Now, in light of the past two videos that I made, because it's really clear, especially on the Taylor Swift video, it's really clear how many of you are missing the mark when it comes to projection. So many people in my comments were doing the thing while also entirely missing the point. They were projecting intention and meaning and nefarious intent to her actions, to her albums that were not actually true. They were projecting onto her, which is exactly what I said people do with public figures. They inaccurately project something onto them, and then they hold them accountable for our projections. This is not healthy healing. This is scapegoating. So when we're dealing with public figures and they trigger the shit out of us, or we just plain don't like them, I want to invite you to ask yourself why. Is it because of something they are actually doing? In the case of the head dipshit in charge, or is it something we are projecting onto them because we are uncomfortable with something? And it might actually not be their intent or what's really happening. It is our projection that we have not owned and dealt with. It is perfectly fine to not like an artist because we don't like them. That's totally fine. But when we are creating an entire story that is not based in reality, that is based on our own prejudices, our own upsets, our own furies, and then we're holding them accountable for things that we fabricated about them, that's not a healthy use of this public figure in our lives. This just further divorces us from our shadow. And when we are divorced from our shadow, we can't heal it. We can't integrate those parts. And we can't make actual change. If you're really mad at billionaires and you're making her the key billionaire you're mad about, meanwhile you're doing nothing about the financial support you're giving other billionaires, shopping at Amazon, big box stores, buying a Tesla, etc., then your shadow is preventing you from actually healing and taking meaningful action. So own your shadows, work through them. Don't just project and run.